This day in sports history. A member of the Sports History Network. Get more info and find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. And one of those podcasts you'll find is Pigskin Dispatch, and a new episode just dropped. Host Darren Hayes caught up with Pro Football Hall of Fame player and coach Dick LeBeau. LeBeau's got a new book coming out about his life in the NFL and the 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Check out this fantastic interview on Pigskin Dispatch, and you can find Pigskin Dispatch wherever you get your podcasts. It's July 10th, and on this day, two iconic Women's World Cup goals were scored more than a decade apart. It's the 25th anniversary of what happened on this day in 1999. And this goal is remembered more for what happened after it than before it or even the goal itself. This was the U.S. versus China in the World Cup final. More than 90,000 people had piled into the Rose Bowl and 20 million more watching on television. It was a hot day in Pasadena, 120 degrees down on the field, and after 90 minutes, it was still a scoreless game. So they went to extra time. This game could have ended so much differently, and it's interesting to wonder how history would have changed had Christine Lilly not saved a header off the line in the 100th minute. That kept the score sheet clean, and after 120 minutes, it was still a scoreless tie. So, it went to penalty kicks to decide the World Cup. Carla Overbeck tied it at 1 as the first PK taker for the U.S., Joy Lynn Fawcett snuck the second PK inside the post to make it 2-2. The next Chinese PK taker was Liu Ying. And the thing to know about this one is that the rules of goalkeeping during a PK shot, it's that the goalie is supposed to have at least 1 foot on the line and cannot move forward until the ball is struck. That's the rule. Well, U.S. goalkeeper Brianna Scurry took 2 steps out before Ying touched the ball and then dove left to deflect the shot. By the letter of the law, that is not allowed, and had it been called, would have been a retake for the Chinese. But the rule was not enforced, despite the fact that the AR is standing on the line looking for what I would presume to be exactly that. But the save opened the door for the U.S. Lilly, the hero from earlier, was next to step up, and she buried one in the upper 90 to give the Americans the advantage. China tied it back up with their 4th attempt. Then Mia Hamm, the greatest women's international goal scorer at that point, was the 4th PK taker, and she made it 4-3 with her low right footer. China made it 4-4 after their 5th try, bringing Brandi Chastain, a natural right footer, to the PK spot with a shot to win it. She had actually missed a PK against China in March. The Chinese goalkeeper Gao Hong had used a little intimidation in that one, walking off the line and standing in front of her for a moment before her take. That had unnerved Chastain just enough to misfire months earlier. With that in the back of her mind, Chastain knew before she even made the walk from midfield that she was going to use her left foot and she was going to avoid all eye contact with Gao. Chastain struck it. Gao guessed correctly and lunged for it, but the placement was perfect, glancing off the inside of the post and hitting the back of the net. Of course, what happened next is probably still vivid in your memory. Chastain ripped off her jersey, waved it once in the air, and dropped to her knees, mobbed by her teammates. That picture was everywhere afterwards. Chastain said years later that the celebration was not premeditated, but it was just joy, relief, satisfaction, the desire to do well for your team, your country, your family, and letting all those emotions out. Put all those things together, and what you get is insanity, she said. It was a celebration of what was a watershed moment for women's soccer and women's athletics in general. As Chastain put it, it changed the social fabric around women's athletics. The interest generated by the women's success in the '99 World Cup inspired the next generation of women's soccer players. It was the most watched Women's World Cup until 2015. The U.S. women were also the first team to win 2 World Cup titles and hold the World Cup title and Olympic title at the same time. Now on to 2011, and the landscape has changed a bit in the 12 years since the '99 World Cup. The excitement generated after '99 had dissipated, and interest had waned. Attendance was down for women's soccer across the board. In the final tune-up match before the U.S. women actually went to Germany for the World Cup in 2011, only 6,000 fans showed up to watch it. The WPS, or the Women's Professional Soccer League, was close to shuttering its doors. Women's soccer in the U.S. needed an injection of energy. But down 2-1 to Brazil in the waning moments of their quarterfinal match, the U.S. women were looking at their earliest exit in World Cup history. Ian Darke was calling the action for ESPN that day, and he was closing up shop, ringing the death knell for their World Cup chances. And to be fair, there was absolutely no reason to believe that a lightning strike was on the horizon. Oh, and the U.S. was also playing down a player after defender Rachel Buehler was sent off in the 65th minute. After Carly Lloyd sailed a shot over the crossbar in the 120th minute, Brazil was content to kill the clock in the corner. But the U.S. got the ball back deep in their own end. And then this happened.
And they've just got to get everybody forward now. No sense defending anymore. Lloyd's got to get this pass off to Rapinoe, and everybody's got to bomb forward now. Rapinoe gets a crossing. It's towards Wambach. Can you believe this? Abby Wambach has saved the USA's life in this World Cup.
Wambach's goal was impressive in execution and its timing. But Megan Rapinoe's ball into the box was a thing of beauty. Her non-dominant left-footed cross was perfectly hit from 45 yards out, curling just over the outstretched fingertips of the Brazilian goalkeeper Andrea, right to Wambach, who buried it in the back of the net, tying the game at 2. It went to penalty kicks, and when Alex Krieger slotted her shot into the left corner, the U.S. advanced to the semifinals, winning 5-3 on PKs. Now, here's the one thing about this game that you may not remember, and it's a callback to what actually happened in '99, but wasn't called. In the second half, when Buehler was red-carded, it was a foul in the box. Hope Solo saved the subsequent PK, but she was ruled to be off her line and a retake was given. Brazil's Marta buried the second one and tied the game at 1, which eventually led to extra time being needed. In the PK shootout, the U.S. was given a retake on their first try due to Andrea being called off her line. It's not that the rule changed between '99 and 2011, just that it was enforced. And while this didn't lead to a World Cup trophy for the U.S. women, they lost in the final to Japan on PKs. The win against Brazil was the much-needed energy injection that women's soccer needed. The NWSL was established the following year, largely based on the excitement generated by what the U.S. women did in the 2011 World Cup. And the NWSL is still growing strong. To golf now. 1953 was a banner year for Ben Hogan. In April, Hogan had won the Masters for the second time. In June, he won the U.S. Open for the fourth time. And now, making his first and what would be his only appearance in the British Open Championship, Hogan would prove to be unbeatable. The Open was played that year at Carnoustie. Now, Carnoustie is considered the toughest of the Scottish courses in open rotation. Some who have played it call it Carnasty. Hogan had been encouraged to go to the UK for years to play in the Open Championship. But travel in those days was a lot tougher than it is now. The first transatlantic flight service from New York to the north of England wasn't even offered until October of '53. So if you wanted to travel to Scotland to, say play in a golf tournament, you had to cruise there on an ocean liner. And once you arrived, there was still no guarantee that you'd play in the tournament. Even for Hogan, a major tournament winner, there was a mandatory 36-hole qualifier at this time. Of course, Hogan had no issues there, and when the tournament started on Wednesday, he was ready to go. But apparently his putter was not. Hogan struggled on the greens, and after shooting a 1/73 in round 1, he was 3 shots off the pace. Despite his putting issues continuing during Thursday's second round, Hogan managed a 1/71 to pull within 2 shots of the lead. Friday, the 10th, was a 36-hole marathon. Hogan woke up that morning actually feeling ill, and he battled the effects of the flu throughout the day, but that apparently did not hinder his golf. His morning round was chugging along just fine until a double bogey at 17. He managed to glue the pieces back together, though, with a birdie at 18 to finish with a round of 70 and move into a tie for the lead with Roberto DiVincenzo. Now, Hogan had made friends with the only American journalist to make the trip to cover the tournament that year. CBS radio man John Durr proved to be a key ally and intelligence gatherer for Hogan. You see, there were no scoreboards on the course, so the golfers really did not have any idea of where they stacked up with the rest of the field, or if anybody was posting a low number. Durr provided information to Hogan throughout his final round to let him know where he stood. After DiVincenzo pushed his drive out of bounds at the 9th, it left Hogan alone on the imaginary leaderboard. He chipped in for birdie at the 5th, rolled in another one on the 6th. By the 13th, he was told by Durr that he had a 2-shot lead. And when he hit the green at 15, he turned to Durr and told him to go set up for his radio broadcast because this tournament is over. Hogan made birdie at the 18th for a final round of 68 to win the Open Championship by 4 shots. Now, there are several reasons Hogan had success at Carnoustie. He was perhaps the best ball striker to ever play the game. He played with such precision that he turned the tough 6th hole into his playground. Now, there is a large bunker in the middle of the fairway at the 6th that most golfers avoid by hitting right of it, putting the approach further away. Instead, Hogan hit the narrow stretch between the cavernous bunker in the middle of the fairway and out of bounds, which was a mere 23 paces separating the two. And he did it on all 4 days. After the tournament, folks started calling it Hogan's Alley. Hogan is still the only golfer to win the Masters, US Open, and British Open titles in the same year. So, did he win the PGA Championship that year? He did not. He didn't even play it. The reason? Well, at this point in time, there really wasn't any consideration for the Grand Slam as we know it today. The 1953 PGA Championship was a match play event held July 1st through the 7th. So, while the tournaments didn't officially overlap, there was just no way to play both with travel time and the fact that the Open required golfers to play a 36-hole qualifier 2 days before the event started. After Hogan's win in '53, though, PGA Tour officials realized it would be in their best interest to move the PGA Championship to another time so as not to conflict. With the Olympics in Paris still a couple of weeks away, let's go back a century and what happened on this day in 1924 in Paris. Finland's Paavo Nurmi defied all expectations of what was humanly possible in this Olympic Games. This was Nurmi's second Olympics. In 1920, he won 3 gold medals and a silver. Nurmi, an incredibly exacting athlete at a time when not many things were exact, prepped religiously for 4 years for the Paris Olympics. Seemingly in an effort to deter Nurmi from winning too many gold medals, the French organizers set the start times for the 1,500-meter and the 5,000-meter race just 55 minutes apart. These were 2 of the events Nurmi was competing in and expected to win gold. But surely with this handicap, Nurmi would have to pick one and run only that one on this day. But instead, Nurmi lined up for the 1,500, took off, ran 4 evenly paced laps, and won gold by a second and a half, setting a new Olympic record. He jogged back to the locker room, emerged 45 minutes later, and lined up at the start line to the surprise of most for the 5,000-meter run. He ran comfortably with fellow Finn Paavo and Sweden's Edvin Veed for the first half of the race. Then he took a quick peek at his stopwatch that he always carried with him and decided to kick it up a notch. When he crossed the line in 14 minutes 31.2 seconds, he had set another Olympic record and won his second gold medal in an hour. Interestingly, the Finnish Olympic coaches also tried to handicap Nurmi by pulling him from the 10,000-meter race that was run 4 days earlier. They simply wanted to give Paavo an opportunity to win the gold medal, which he did. But Nurmi was fuming that he did not get the opportunity to run and win the 10,000-meter race. So instead, Nurmi ran the course alone. His time was faster than Paavo's and would have won him another gold medal if he'd been allowed to compete. Nurmi competed in 3 different Olympic Games, winning a total of 9 golds and 2 silvers. Time now for today's non-sports fun fact. The state of Colorado may look like a trapezoid on a map, but it actually has 697 sides. That's all for today. Thanks for checking out this edition. If you have a moment, how about leaving a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts? That would be super cool if you did, but if you got a scoot, no worries. I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.